Whose jersey are you wearing? Is that a Hurts jersey?
I'm wearing number 1, Bree of 1, Philadelphia Eagles, the best quarterback in the league. No, he's not, but he's good.
You could have said. You could have said the best team in the league.
They are by far the best team in the league. The best defense I've seen in my lifetime. In that Super Bowl performance, I was not alive to watch the 84. I was alive, but 84 Bears. But yeah,
85,
I saw 84. Yeah, they had 2 years right back to back. But that's the best defensive performance I've seen ever by an NFL team in a Super Bowl. And Jalen Hurts just does what he does.
Even the Ravens defense with Ray Lewis, I'm trying to remember when they had Trent Dilfer as quarterback.
Yeah, they shut down Patrick Mahomes completely for 3 quarters.
Sure.
He went 3 and out 4 times in a row. Patrick Mahomes.
I'm not arguing that.
Travis Kelce.
Defense was amazing.
It's ridiculous. It was with 2 rookies and they didn't blitz one single time in 3.5 quarters. Vic Fangio is a defensive genius, and he's the second best signing Eagles made this offseason.
Perfect intro for the show that has nothing to do with football, but that's an insight into the mind of our guest today, Nikolaj Ronnow. And if you think that he knows a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFL, he does. In fact, he knows far more about it than CrossFit and CrossFit athletes, as you're going to learn throughout the course of this show when he gives a variety of attempts to undo my power rankings for the WFP season. And I put him in his place like I typically do.
All right. Wow.
Welcome to the show, Nico.
Someone's had a good morning. It's typical of the Chicago Bears fans. It's off season, and you can't lose for another 7 months.
So, we're undefeated this year. That's what we're riding. We're going to ride that out as long as possible, and probably till
so is the Eagles, even though we played 3 times this year.
So we're when's our first match? Do we have a game scheduled this season?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I think you actually going to Europe.
No, do the Bears play the Eagles this year?
No, they don't.
Dang, that's usually an easy win.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you don't know Nico, he's been around the CrossFit space for a super long time, mostly working behind the camera, but he does host a podcast in Denmark as well. You've done over 100 episodes now, right?
I have, yeah. Been on small hiatus, but yeah, it's coming back.
And you've had some pretty high-profile guests on there, some of whom we will talk about today in the show. The focus of this week's show is going to be on this. So Brian can explain the men's rankings. Yesterday, I put out, Patrick put together a beautiful graphic to help highlight the 20 athletes who were signed as part of the inaugural season of the WFP, the World Fitness Project. They will be competing 3 times this year. I think that there's already a good amount of information out, but there's been a lot going on, so maybe not that easy to keep everything straight with the Open coming and the WFP season coming and all the drama surrounding those things. So I did just want to start by making this kind of clear what these power rankings are referring to. A few people in the comments, I think, probably corrected that language a little bit. This is more of a projection of the 20 signed athletes. By the time they compete in Indianapolis in May, compete in Mesa at the end of August, and compete in Copenhagen in Denmark, where Nico is from, in December, they will have a chance to accumulate a series of points. I think it's going to be, like, in terms of the total points available, I think it's going to be very similar to like a semifinal, and then like a lighter side of games, maybe more like a Rogue Invitational points total. So we can expect 600 or 700 points at the tour stops, and then 900 points, 10,000 points, etc., that count double at the end of the season, where eventually a tour champion will be crowned. And how I have read it, at least, is that you don't actually have to win the tour finals to be the tour champion. The goal is to accumulate as many points as possible over the course of those 3 events, and that the top 20 points earners, not the top 20 finishers at the final, will get a pro tour card for the final season. And that's ultimately the ranking that I was trying to predict for these 20 athletes, knowing that there will be other athletes that factor into the equation. There are 10 eligible spots at both of the first 2 stops. They come through a qualifier. and then it's actually based on points you've earned to get your spot into the finals. And yeah, there was quite a bit of excitement or fired upness around some of the things that I put out there yesterday. Nico and I have had conversations for as long as we've known each other, which I think was the 2018 games that we first met. Was it 19, 18,
No,
19?
it was before. No, it's before.
That?
I think it was in Los Angeles.
Ooh, I don't think so, because you were working already for CrossFit, but I was only there as a fan in 2016. So
okay,
it was in those message boards.
Yeah, that's where I spend most of my days.
And we have often had just great conversations around this, specifically on the men's side of things. Nico has been close friends with Fredrik Gidius since before I knew what CrossFit was, and he's known Björgen Carl Gudmundsson for his whole career, Jona Koski for his whole career, Pat Vellner for his whole career. And so he's, when you know just even a couple of those athletes from beginning all the way through, you also get exposure to a lot of other things that makes athletes great, that separates them at high level competition, on and off the floor. He spent a lot of time in the warm-up areas at big competitions where a lot of things happen that you can't always see on broadcasts. And I thought it would be fun to bring him on to talk about these projections. Obviously, we also have Patrick here. Patrick has a breadth and depth of knowledge when it comes to athletes around the world as well. So I'm sure he'll be offering some insights. But, just as a supplement, if you want to follow along, there's a post on Instagram. There's also this article online. I actually did appreciate someone eventually put a comment in there. It goes, okay, I'll read the post and the article before I jump to any conclusions here.
No, jump to conclusions. That's what it's all about.
And
that's why the internet was created.
But there's one thing in the article I also wanted to go to. It's kind of like an intro that I wrote for the article to lay the foundation for a couple things before we actually get to some of the names on the list. These are like factors that I considered and things that I did mention with a few athletes, but I didn't want to be overlooked. And the first thing on this list is the number of competitions that athletes are doing this year. The second thing is their age relative to those number of competitions. And by their age, I mean, could be their age on paper, but also their training age. So an athlete who's been doing this as a training discipline and a competitive outlet for 10 to 12 years compared to someone who's been doing it for 4 to 6 years is a big difference. And Nico, I did want to ask you about that before we get to any of the people specifically, having spent so much time around these athletes, having trained and competed a little bit in your own regard. What is reasonable for us to expect at this point in terms of the number of times that one of the 10 or 20 best athletes in the world in competitive fitness can show up to a competition in a calendar year and be at their best?
Well, be at their best, that'll be one. So, and that's not even a year. That'll be in a cycle of 4 years, like the Olympics. But they don't need to be at their best. Matt Fraser's probably never been at his best. Neither has Tia-Clair Toomey. But what's reasonable in terms of they can perform to a high level, I think once a quarter is reasonable. It's going to be hard to spread it out in the spring, summer, fall, and winter, but that's kind of what we're seeing right now. We've seen athletes compete at semifinals. You have to be ready at semifinals in this day and age. At the CrossFit Games, again, a Rogue, and some people do. In the back in the day, it was Dubai. Dubai is kind of like fallen off a little bit in terms of tier 1 athletes, but now it's Wodapalooza. So 4 times is fine. We've seen other athletes who, like Adrian Mundweiler did a few years ago, where he competed back to back to back. So did Luca Jukic. We're going to get back to him later. He has to change his approach. But yeah, I think 4 times is reasonable. For some athletes, it's going to be harder, and depending on what they need to work on. If they're more complete athletes like Jeffrey Adler, he doesn't need to work on weaknesses as much as other athletes. They have like glaring holes they need to close. That's hard when you don't have a true off season, but I think 4 times is fine. You do mention the training age, and I think that's one of the things. If it was back to back to back events, like week after week, like if this was like a 4-week season, sure, Patrick Vellner would take a drastic hit on my power ranking, but it's not back to back to back. It's there's a month between, and training age also goes to training intelligence, and therefore experienced athletes are going to have a advantage more so than like younger athletes who might recover faster. They might also overextend themselves and make mistakes throughout the seasons. We've seen on your power ranking at Victor Hofer, almost like he's been injured several times at his young age. That's not a good sign. We saw the same thing with Janikowski at an early age. So training intelligence and experience also weighs in a factor. And I'm going to weigh that as a positive in this power ranking.
What you're seeing,
go ahead,
you're seeing the evolution of athletes. Like you wouldn't think back to 2015, even up to maybe 2017, athletes peaking as much. And now you're seeing athletes, especially with the uncertainty of like semifinals. And I mean, it seemed like it started from 2020 when they had sanctionals, where athletes were just like, they're doing mini peaks where they would peak, maybe up to like 90% of what their capacity would be for some of these main qualify for the games. And then they would take a week off, and then they'd start that whole cycle all over. But this with the more with the goal being completely peaked by the time of the games. So athletes have gotten really smarter about it, especially over the last couple of years with semifinals, with some of these big name events like Wodapalooza, Rogue, because Rogue, the difference between the games and Rogue, and we saw this, I think it was like 3 years ago or 2 years ago at Rogue, where I think the turnaround was 1 month between the games, and athletes would take almost 1 month off before picking up training again for Rogue. And they got the Rogue, and that was a year Rogue had like 12 events, and it was just brutal. I mean, I know Ricky was really hurting. A lot of other athletes were hurting because they weren't used to that volume so soon after the games, taking a month off. But now you're seeing like after the games, they're taking shorter, maybe a week off, because they know they have Rogue circled, because Rogue after the games, well, in previous years, I don't know about this year, but Rogue was the second highest prize purse. And right now it's looking like, if things go as they are with the games, it might be the largest prize purse in functional fitness or CrossFit, with over $300,000 for the winner. Yeah. So Nico brought up a great point though about like, for, almost quarterly, but I look at it in terms of like just different peaks throughout the season. And I think that's a cool thing. Ultimately, the WFP, Will Jackson, they've talked about having 5-6 events, but the athletes don't have to do all 5 or 6 events, but they have to do a minimum of 4, and they can break that up in quarters at 3 month times and do mini peaks up until the last one. So, that's just kind of how my 2 cents on that.
I also wanted to just touch on the last bullet there. It says recent competition performance or lack thereof in some cases. And just if we look through, like, people have a very, it's so fascinating to see in the comments how people get latched on to a concept. We will talk more about James Sprague specifically, but following the win at the CrossFit Games, which obviously came with a caveat and an asterisk relative to other years because of the lack of participation and extenuating circumstances, there was a lot of still like, I don't know what to do with this guy. But then he wins Wodapalooza, and suddenly everyone's like, it's James Sprague. And so, Nico, I just wanted to get your perspective on the last several competitions that we've had, specifically on the men's side of things. We look at the game where we're missing some huge names there. A couple others like Ricky and Roman got injured or were injured. We go to Rogue. We had a fairly full field, but James comes in sick. Vellner competed sick. And so we didn't get maybe the perfect data points on those guys. Dubai this year, Luca kind of runs away with it. He's the only athlete in this roster that was at that field. So it's not a great data point for him or really for this conversation. And then we have Wodapalooza, which is only 6 events, 2 days. There are some specific events like a hang, clean complex that can drastically affect things. And, we get maybe 2/3 of the competitiveness of the field that we would have at WFP. Do you see any, how meaningful do you see those 4 competitions being in even trying to evaluate this field?
Well, obviously the CrossFit Games got cut short a little bit, but we still have 12 events for the CrossFit Games.
I think it was 10.
It was only 10. Well, still, there's a lot of data points, but it was still strange data points because we don't know what events was missing. There must have been like a heavier event. There must have been a high rep muscle up event missing that got cut out due to uncertainties. We're not going to get into that in this podcast. Rogue Invitationals was, I think, the closest we got to a complete test, because everyone was there, everyone was competing. Obviously, we had two major athletes in the CrossFit Games champion, James Sprague, and Pat Vellner, obviously being sick, and therefore they were competing, but competing, at less of ideal capacity. When I look at Wodapalooza has a tagline that says "Celebrate Fitness," and Wodapalooza never claims to be a test of fitness or finding the fittest. It's never what they do. They claim to celebrate fitness, and they just did just that. It was a great weekend, and they never try to be something they're not. Wodapalooza is not a test of, it is a test of fitness, but is the fittest always going to win? No. And I don't think they did. I don't think there's anyone in the world of whatever this is, CrossFit, functional fitness, that's going to say Lucy Campbell is the fittest woman at the competition, nor is James Sprague. James Sprague does more, but I still think there's people fitter than him in the field. We had 2.5 monostructural workouts in that. We had a workout that was only a clean. That's kind of monostructural because it's only one thing. And you had a run. I don't care about the echo bike or it was a run and step overs. If you're good at that, and then we had 3 workouts where it depended on shoulder endurance. So it was a great test in terms of, like, it was fun to watch and athletes got pushed to the limits, but it wasn't a complete and full test. But it was a great experience. It was fun to watch. But winning Wodapalooza is the least important data point of the 4. And also, if you, outside of James Sprague, Patrick Vellner, Austin Hatfield, who else competed? There wasn't really these, like,
Yona,
Jana and Ricky, of course. There wasn't any tier 1 athletes, in my opinion. And I'm even going to debate whether or fact in 2024, Jana is a tier 1 athlete. He can become it again, but he needs to re-earn that status. But he's right on that cusp.
So I think that that sets a pretty good kind of baseline for what we're talking about here. This is not a data point in time right now with me saying these are the fittest guys on earth. My ranking and order for that would look differently, and I've tried to consider what each of these athletes individually has advertised that they're planning to do with their season. In some cases, we don't really know what the total spectrum of that looks like. But in the case of James Sprague, he actually went on his own Instagram and laid it out for his wife. Hey, we have all these competitions lined up. And I think that at the top end, guys like Sprague, possibly Dallin Pepper, Jason Hopper, others will fall into this category that we may not know yet, that they could be trying to do between 7 and 10 elite level competitions, starting with the Open, I guess, that is over a 10-month span. If you don't count the Open and you consider their first qualifying event for the game season or this online semifinal, then it's going to be about an 8-month time period where they're trying to do at least 7 highly competitive competitions. And that has to be considered, especially when you're going against the favorite. And I actually on the article, I broke down these 20 guys into 4 tiers or groups, which didn't show on the Instagram. But in group 1 is only one guy. To me, this is absolutely the person to beat. Patrick, if you want to scroll down or pull up a picture of him or whatever.
Well, I kind of wanted to emphasize something that Nico again brought up, and I think you did too. I want to ask this question to you. If Wodapalooza, the test that we saw at Wodapalooza this past year, if that was a semi, how would you rate that, compare that to like a semifinal in terms of like testing?
Lower.
Lower? Exactly.
Lower, because it's not, they don't aim to find the fittest for them to send them onwards to the CrossFit Games. That's Dave Castro's job, to find in some cases, 10 fittest people in Europe to make sure they go to the CrossFit Games. Wodapalooza has a different purpose.
Yeah, and I think that plays into a lot of the argument there. Like, well, he won Wodapalooza. I'm like, and I think that's the point. If James would have won, let's say, the West semifinal, if you take the winner of the West semifinal, which was Justin Maderos this past year, I don't think anyone picked Maderos to win the games this coming season. Or you probably wouldn't pick him to win the World Fitness Project this year. We'll go over that here in a second. So I think just seeing something in a small sample size, like obviously James did a great job at the games. No one's going to take that away from him. I know some people have, but ultimately he is the fittest on earth. He is the games champion. Okay. No one else can lay claim to that, despite whoever was there. All he can do is compete against the people that show up. He showed up at Wadapalooza. Same
Yeah,
people
yeah.
showed up. Said it was over 6
Oh, he
days.
won.
Yeah, he won. But
He won.
Yeah. So I think that I think people are looking at results. Everything's results driven. They see the results, but they're not looking at the totality of it. And I think that's what Brian was trying to do, and what Nico, you seem to agree on, is like you got to look at the totality of the test. So and what's going on across a whole season, not just a weekend or
I
game
did want
season.
to I did want to pull this up here. The WFP has put out a show on their YouTube that has Will, Jackson, and Ryan explaining a few of the fan questions that had come in, and it does lay out this points system. So the first two events, six events is what we talked about, and one that has 9. So we already identified that what we're looking at here is. Oh, you want to start from the bottom, Patrick?
Yeah.
Oh, so there's 4,000 points available, right?
1,800 and 1,200. There should be 4,000 points available if that holds true over the course of the season.
And we're 3,000 to be sure, but yeah 3,000. Yeah, sorry.
We're gonna start
The
from the bottom.
No, because the finals counts double.
It does.
How many events is the final?
900 points.
900, but that's 8. Then that's 1,800, 1,200. Yeah. So
correct.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start at the bottom. Oh man, I was so excited about the top.
You want me? I can start from the top.
Can I add something about a power ranking? Because I'm not going to go back to the NFL, but it's something we do every weekend in the NFL, and I think people get it wrong. What a power ranking is. A power ranking is a living organism. It's right now. It's a moment in time where we say, if tomorrow number 20 Victor Hoffer played against number 19, which is BKG. Spoiler alert. In a neutral ground. They did 7 events or whatever. That was perfect to each of the individual strength. No outliers, no injuries, nothing outside happens. We would pick BKG one spot. We would pick him to beat Victor Hoffer. Yeah. However, there's outliers that we don't know who else is going to compete. We don't know the qualifying athletes because it hasn't happened yet. We don't know about injuries. We don't know about programming. We don't know about illness, all that stuff. And people have to take that into consideration. And there's no way that we're going to sit here and agree on the same power ranking come May, whatever, once the first event has played out. It's going to change. And new information is going to arise all the time. Then we're going to get a video of BKG being injured or James Brake being sick or whatever. And then we're going to alter the power ranking. So I think people should write down a power ranking of their top 20 right now, even just do a top 10 and see how much stuff is going to change throughout the season.
And that's part of the reason why I think this works and it's so contentious sometimes. Is like, this is Brian's power rankings. Do your own. I mean, make your own power rankings, compare it, and go back and forth. I mean, Nico, you hit it right on dot. I mean, you see power rankings just about every sport, even wrestling. Like there's power rankings for wrestling, which is it's in all intents and purposes, I don't use the word fake, but it's a scripted show of athleticism. We know what the result is, but but to say like someone's better than the other it's all subjective. The only way that it doesn't become subjective is at the end of the season when a champion is crowned and you look at all the points. That's the only time it's not subjective. So this is going into the season. Please, I mean, Brian, kudos for you. I know this is something we've talked about for a while. And when I first brought it up, you were kind of reluctant to do it. But as you started doing it, you turned it into this living, breathing document that could, once the season starts, or, we'll have to revisit these power rankings with the challengers after the first event. We'll probably do power rankings with just the challengers too. I mean, if you look at the list, there's some heavy hitters out there. The annual Kais who have, there's guys in there who deservingly probably need to be in the top 20, but they aren't. So this
PC, can I ask you, because this is only signed athletes, people have to understand when people lose their shit over, oh, this guy isn't there. Well, he isn't signed. So, exactly. PC, who's missing on the list? So who's not signed, obviously?
The first person that comes to mind for me is someone like Colton Mertens. Obviously he didn't make it to the games this year, but he was so close. And like, where would Colton rank in the WFP field? I mean, I think Colton would have did really well at the games this year if he had the ability to go. And I think he's one guy. I like Anyola Kai. He's like peaking at the right moments. He's I mean, what he did at Wodapalooza, again, I know it's a small sample size and not really, just what he's done across the board. I mean, top 5 at Wodapalooza. He's won a couple events. He looks really good. But yeah, those are the 2 that jump out to me in terms of men. I don't know was there someone you had in mind?
No, just interesting because, like, obviously, if you're looking at the cross games last year, obviously, well, he's not competing anymore. Brent Fikowski is missing, but no, I think they did a really good job at collecting. They collected basically the whole field. I don't feel like anyone's like there's any glaring like, oh, he isn't there. When it comes to the women's side, that's a little different.
It's a little bit. I agree. We'll talk.
But that's another podcast.
Exactly.
We went over this a couple of weeks ago on a show, and I think that the Apollo Power Analytics rankings are the best in Perform Analytic rankings are the most comprehensive in the world, and guys who are in the top 20 of that ranking that are not signed athletes are Anyola Kai, Henrik Kapalainen for obvious reasons, Harry Lightfoot, but he jumped up into that ranking after Wodapalooza, so when they were signing athletes, he wasn't there. Saxon Panchik, who has taken himself out of the field, which would then open up a spot for Samuel Cornway, and I'm not sure if he's competing anymore or not either. So they actually do have a pretty comprehensive list of that top 20, and then knowing that they were actually looking at Rogue's top 20 helps to understand why you have guys like Chandler Smith and Noah Olson, who are well within the top 20 of Rogue, but not well within the top 20 based on doing mostly team competitions the last couple of years otherwise.
Can I just agree on they didn't sign Lucy Campbell prior to Wodapalooza. That was based off.
They did sign a couple of athletes after the fact, but there were more spots available at that point for the women than the men. And I actually liked that they held off. I don't know if it was intentional or not and waited for that to give them a chance. It was actually worked out, I think, really well that Saxon pulled out so that they could get Austin Hatfield, who I feel also did earn an invite. He's up to 12th on the Apollo rankings. He's only 24th on Rogue's rankings. So,
and I actually like the idea. I mean, that they did sign someone like Chandler and Noah, because one, they're well-known commodities. They have proven themselves. Maybe they're not the fittest in the field, but that's the thing is like, we know out of this top 20, there's going to be athletes. There's going to be athletes that aren't going to be part of the top 20 next year. I think that's what makes it fun. It's like, does Noah, I mean, it gives someone like Noah and Chandler like, hey, I'm going to have to fight for the spot if I want to do it, if I want to be in the spot next year and earn potential more money. So, but I have no problem with that because they are well-known athletes and commodities in the sport. So when you're starting a league, you got to put the best and also the most popular. I'm sorry. I mean, I know most of me would say, hey, it's all based on merit. But at the same time, I think popularity does say something. When you bring someone like Noah, because we know how much fun they are to watch on a competition floor and how popular they are. And they'll bring more eyes on. So I have no problem with that at all. So,
but they left some spots open. Obviously, you said for the women. Can we just agree on the fact they left one spot specifically open, and she declined? Tia Kletsumi declined to participate, and they obviously left a spot open for the greatest of all time in our sport. Like, we don't have to tiptoe around that.
There were 4 women signed after Wodapalooza.
Yes, but they held off as long as possible. Of course, it's a business. She's the greatest of all time. She's the Michael Jordan of the sport. They held off as long as possible to sign Tia Kletsumi, and she, of course, declined since she's not here. Like, that's not a
she got high secret. Right? And High Rocks.
Hey, what's wrong with that?
Nothing at all. I know High Rocks is perfect for someone like you.
So a couple things. Just wanted to say, Patrick, SPM £10 donation, so you can submit your monthly invoice for $4 to me, and I'll make sure to pay you this month.
Yep.
We didn't actually answer this question, and Augustus Link is a avid fan of the sport of fitness and Colton Mertens. If he were signed in the top 20 or 21, where would he fall on your rankings?
12.
I was going to say it's 12 to 15 range. I think that's pretty appropriate for him.
Because he has home run potential. However, there's the joker of when does his home run events occur. The same is going to be the thing with Austin Hatfield. When does his...
The thing is that in these projections, it doesn't actually matter because this is a points accumulation across what we can assume is 21 scoring opportunities or 4,000 points on 3 events. It's only that final season point total that matters.
Yeah, but doesn't the final count double?
Yes. So, yes, that's true.
So if Colton Mertens got the perfect workout in Copenhagen, that would mean way more than if he got it in Indiana.
Yeah,
Colton is registered on the challenger list. That is true.
Yeah,
and I do think
but if he was here, his ranking would depend on when because he is a home run hitter and he has outlier events for him, and it would matter when it happened. It would matter greatly if it happened in Copenhagen or in Indiana or I can't remember the last place, but yeah,
Tucson.
Augustus, of course, thinks higher. He also acknowledges that he's biased, and he says if we think that Anjol, Guy, or Harry is beating Mertens, then we are smoking illegal contraband. We may or may not be smoking illegal contraband. That doesn't affect our opinions about this. Actually, we know Patrick's not doing that, so that's good. A good thing at least. But look, I mean, this is a contentious statement to be just blank. We will talk more about Guy because he's on this list. Anjol and Harry Lightfoot are getting to be very good, and I do think that it is a super valid conversation about whether or not they could beat Colton in competition. But they're not on this list. These guys, hopefully, we would hope that guys like Anjol, Harry, Colton would do the qualifiers and get into the conversation if they choose to do it. But I do want to get started on the athletes here. I put Jeff Adler in a tier of his own as the favorite, having won the last 3 significant competitions that he shows up at, which is Rogue Invitational, 2023 CrossFit Games, 2024 North American East semifinals. In all 3 of those cases, I could go down a detailed list about why and what was so impressive that Jeff did there. But I think in addition to his competition performances, the thing that Adler does better than almost everyone on this list is he's very disciplined and selective about where and when he competes. And he's already basically said it. If you're planning on doing more than the WFP season this year, you're not beating me.
I think it's very important to stress the fact that there are some athletes we know are going to compete at the CrossFit Games season, and we're not going to get into the whole do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing, or whatever. But in terms of this power ranking and performing at the World Fitness Project, Dallin Pepper, Jason Hopper, that I know of, Ricky Garard, Austin Hatfield, that to me is something I'm going to pull them down because you have 2 more major events. And you also have to be kind of ready for the Open because it's still a stress factor. It's still stuff you have to do. It's not nothing. I know it's for elite level athlete, doesn't matter that much, but you have to be ready for semifinals, whether that's the in-person one or the online one, and you have to be ready at the games. And that takes a stress on the body. And after the games, you get 4 weeks before you have to compete. It's 2 months or 4 weeks. Regardless, it's soon after the games you have to compete again at the second round in World Fitness Project. So for a guy like Jeffrey Adler, Pat Vellner, who's sitting out, they have an advantage, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and so I mean, I don't think we need to spend too much time here on Jeff Adler. I do want to make sure to recognize that Patrick definitely can add whatever you would like to add. That I had said it prior to this year's games, prior to Rogue Invitational, and I'm saying it prior to this season. Right now, for me, he's in this tier by himself. And if anybody wants this spot, they have to show me probably, and WFP is a good opportunity to do it because it is over the course of at least 20 competitive opportunities on the field of play that they can beat this guy. Otherwise, he's going to stay in this spot for me.
Yeah. I kind of want to, Augustus, you're on fire, man. You've been putting out a lot of good comments and good questions here, but will Adler be able to compete 3 different times? That seems a lot for him. I don't think what people, I think what we've been able to witness is for the athlete that Adler is right now is because Adler was competing a lot. He now knows his body. He doesn't have to test himself at competition. There were instances there where he was doing Wadapalooza, Dubai, and Rogue on top of the game season. So he's done that. He's done that before. But that he doesn't need to do that anymore because he knows where his level of fitness is. The reason why he was doing so many competitions is like he was trying to get there and see what works for him in those competitions. He's found what works. It's proven successful, so he doesn't need to deviate until he gets beat. And right now, no one's beating him, whether it be a semifinal or the games when he's competed at the games, and he's done the same at Road. So whatever, and that's what I love about Adler is like he's shown it. Doesn't matter what type of format, whether it be a 2-day competition or a week-long competition, he's probably the most well prepared of any athlete for those elements and those types of tests. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, and
Nico, final thought on Adler.
He just performs on it. He never leaves points on the table. He does what I like to call compete nervous, because he is nervous, but in a good way, and he utilizes those nerves to optimize his performance. He's Fraser competed nervous. He doesn't leave points on the table. He doesn't make mistakes, and we're going to get to third place on the power ranking and at some point. But Jeffrey Adler is the Canadian that doesn't make mistakes, and that's why he will. If he decided to compete, he would win the CrossFit Games for as long as he wanted. Relax.
Yeah, and
relax,
he's also moved into this echelon that we have spoken about for years and years in his life that facilitates excellence. He owns a gym, and that's kind of like running itself. He doesn't have to be involved in the day-to-day. He's got a beautiful training facility with all the equipment he needs, all the recovery stuff he needs, all the time he needs, the support from his wife and his coach and his sponsors. He's got a specialist in Chris Hinshaw who comes up there to refine things with him that are already elite amongst his competitors and peers. He doesn't put out a ton of workouts, but he put out this workout yesterday around the whiteboard that he's doing. There was just this crazy upper body discipline workout with chest bar pull-ups, legless rope climbs, and seated strict L muscle ups, which is at the highest echelon of the type of training that you can do, targeting all the same muscle groups over and over under increasing fatigue. And it's going to be hard to beat him. And in terms of WFP, I don't think that anybody who's doing more than 4 competitions this year has any chance against a healthy Jeff Adler.
Do you think anyone has a chance of, let's say, just remove the World Fitness Project? Do you think, and nothing happened, do you think anyone would be able to beat him at the CrossFit Games in a 3-year span?
In a 3-year span, if we had gone back, it was like we were repeating
just
21.
Rewind time. Just rewind time.
Yes,
like everything's.
Yes, but I think he would podium in all 3 years.
Okay, and I agree too. Dallin Pepper could, yeah.
So Dallin Pepper is in this next group of athletes. And by the way, if I was doing a power rankings of who I thought the fittest people on earth are right now, Dallin Pepper would check in at number 2. But on the website here, Podium threats. Actually, I mentioned there are a lot.
Tier 2, by the way, this is second tier.
Yeah, this is the second tier, and it's actually 2 through 9 on my rankings, which are grouped into this tier. Within this tier, I talk about Hatfield, Vellner. I group Pepper, Hopper, and Sprague together. Then I group together the Australians, Ricky and Jay, and then I have Roman rounding out the list. We're going to spend a decent amount of time talking about these guys because this is the area of the list where I felt like there was the most scrutiny, the most questions. It's a very, very high profile of athlete here. I just wanted to start by letting you both kind of weigh in. Do you feel like there's any athlete amongst these 7 that doesn't belong in this group, or anyone that's outside of this list that could be included here? Nico, you can go first.
Well, Austin Hatfield does not belong in that group. And it's not a knock on Austin, because that's the thing about power ranking. Someone said earlier, don't disrespect Anil Lakai. We haven't disrespected Anil Lakai, quite the opposite. We've only said positive things about it, but there can only be one winner and only be one person in second place. There's no metrics, however you want to frame it, where you can put Austin in second place. He's going to be competing in the Open.
Are you sure you want to say that?
Well,
Don't worry, I got my metrics lined up.
Call up Barkley. I don't care. Like
I don't need Barkley for this.
But fine. But let's go back in time. He took at semifinals. And I don't need to have him here. Whatever. I think 8th place at semifinals. Jeffrey Adler obviously won. He didn't beat Dallin Pepper, Roman Khrennikov, Jason Hopper. Or I think Jack Rosema beat him there. Then we had games where
let's put a you could go down. We know his competition history: 8th, 10th, 3rd. Those are the 3 competition data points.
Yeah,
at
but
the semis,
how is he ending up ahead of Patrick Vellner? Then we had Rogue Invitationals
Okay,
where he
let me just throw this.
he didn't
Let me just
compete.
throw this.
He didn't
Let me just
compete
throw
at
this
Rogue.
out at you. Let me throw this at you. Have you checked James Sprague's competitive results prior to last year's game season? Because on paper, what James Sprague has done before showing up to the West Coast semifinals last year, nobody on planet Earth, including him or his coach, would have picked him to go 3rd at the West Coast, 1st at the CrossFit Games. It was completely unprecedented, unfounded. And if I put out a ranking that had said that last August or July or June, everybody on Earth would have said that I'm insane, crazy. There's no precedent for this. And yet he went out and did it. How did he make that possible?
It was my idea to put him on Miles of Madison. That was my pitch because I knew James was going to do something special. But yeah, no, it was unprecedented.
You didn't know he was going to win the CrossFit.
No, win the games. No, win the games. No, not at all. Not at all.
Place at the West Coast Classic. Yes, you and I have both known James for a long time. Patrick's known him for a long time, and we knew that he could be really good. We never knew how good he can be. He's already eclipsed as good as I ever thought he would become, and he's beyond impressive. I'm using him here as an example that sometimes somebody over the course of 12 months makes a jump that doesn't make any sense at all prior to seeing that.
Agreed, and that will happen every season, but I can't say that before the season. Then I'm just guessing and saying, well, I like this guy, I think he's good. Because I want to go back to Waterpalooza, and it's going to sound like and I hate this because it sounds like I'm giving a knock at Austin Hatfield, which I'm not. I was super impressed with him. He's a great guy. I had a chance to talk to him. He did great in certain workouts. He started the weekend off at Waterpalooza not so great. He took 9th place and 18th place, but then the Waterpalooza workouts was played right in his favor. It was a heavy clean where only Guy can beat him, and then the 3 workouts was basically how much endurance do you have in your shoulders. It was about the bench press or the strict handstand push-ups. Waterpalooza was not a great test of fitness. It was a great event, and it played to Austin's strength, which apparently also is James' strength. James, despite his anatomy being like mine with long arms and terrible levers for benching, he's great at it. I need to see Austin do this consistently and also do it in higher aerobic workouts, which he hasn't done yet.
Didn't he get 2nd place at the games in Chad?
Yes.
Yes, and bring Chris Hinshaw on here. Chad is not an endurance workout. It's just about quad stamina, and he has that for days, and he's built for it.
Patrick, you want to add anything about Hatfield? You've watched a lot of athletes come up from relatively unknown ranks and make it to the top end of the sport. Do you think that this guy has what it takes to do that and to do it this year?
I think he has what it takes. However, I don't agree with him being number 2 because what I see when you put Austin Hatfield at number 2 is the same mistake of me putting Jason Hopper, finishing on the podium at the games in his rookie year.
I did that as well. I will take ownership for that.
I know. And I've learned that lesson because from that. And Austin, I really do believe if the total test would have played itself out at the games, Austin would actually finish better than his 10th place. Simply because the 2 workouts that were removed would have been really good workouts for him as well. And those workouts would have actually been probably not so good for some of the people that finished ahead of him. But back to your original. So in terms of does Austin potential-wise, Austin Hatfield has the most potential in anyone in this field for the WFP. Is he number 2 based on right now? If I had to put Austin Hatfield in a pool with these 20 athletes, would he finish number 2? Probably not. But he has the potential to be. But again, it's your rankings. Back to the original question: is there an athlete in the tier that we think doesn't belong? As much as it hurts to say this, I would have to say Roman, and I'm a big Roman fan. I'm a big proponent of Roman, but I would say Roman at 9. Considering I kind of put him in the same category, almost like a Victor, maybe not that extreme, because obviously Roman was healthy enough to finish the game, but he was healthy enough. He finished 9th with a bum hip and some other injuries. We haven't seen him since then. A hip injury, and we know Roman can bounce back from injuries pretty fast, and he's very efficient. But we don't know at what level. Do I think he's at a 9 currently right now? Probably not. I think he'd probably be more in the 15 range. So that's the answer to the original question. Is there anyone from that list that I think is not deserving that second tier? My pick right now would be Roman, but I definitely hope I'm wrong, and he proves me wrong in that first qualifier in Indianapolis.
Do you see the similarities between Roman and Sarah Sigmundsdottir right now? Like, she was like, everyone going into the 2016 season, like, Sarah's going to crush everyone. It's not even discussion who's going to win the games. She's going to win the games. And Roman, coming in, he obviously hurt his ankle. Did Jeff win? Jeff won. I need to see him come back and have that stellar performance. He did well at semifinals. He did really well, and he was close to Jeff, but then he wasn't there at the games for whatever reason. And I need to see him come back, and I need to see him come back a few times in a row. But if Podium said, "Well, Fitness Project," I'm not shocked. I'm not. That's the great thing about power rankings right now. No, he's not. I think 9 is fine. But he's nowhere near top 3. But I could change that in a heartbeat if I see the old Roman, because these guys don't have anything on him if he's 100%.
That's why that's why he came in at the back end of this group for me. Is not because of what his top end potential is, but because of some of those things that we qualified in the beginning, which is, I don't know what we're going to get from Roman. I mean, Facundo put out a post, I think yesterday, a story saying he's back, showing him doing a heavy split jerk and bringing it back down. But I was like nervous watching it because.
But that's his job. It's his job as a coach to promote him and make sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's like whoever had said, Nadine here, best case scenario, we get all these guys healthy every time they compete. It's an incredible slate of men that are competing in this in the WFP this year, and it's difficult to project how it's going to go when you have a guy who has had some injury history in the last couple of years and hasn't done anything in terms of competition other than show up and take pictures in the last 7 months. It's difficult to say that he's going to beat guys like this. I just wanted to throw one other thing out there about Hatfield real quick, because I knew that people would be really critical of that, and Nico touched on it, but because Nico's such a fan of Brent Fikowski, I went back and looked at 5 years from the games where he finished 4th, 2nd, 4th, 3rd, and 4th respectively. And his average event finishes at the games in those years was 15, 19, 11, 9, and 11. Why is his average event finish so low when he's finishing so high? Nico, the answer to this is because he can win events. He can win events. Winning events is so critical. Austin Hatfield won 3.5 events at Wodapalooza. You can't count the one against Guy, but let's be serious. That's ridiculous. He won 2 of the last 3 events at the games. He does have a few critical holes in his games. Echo bike, when it's a dominating part of a workout. Sled workouts have been bad for him. Swimming, terrible. And we're expecting to see 1 swim out of the 22 scoring events or whatever it is in WFP season. But over the last 20 or so competitive outlets that Hatfield has had at 3 significant data points that we have for him, his average finish is 11th. And he's won 5 of those events, 6 of those events, over a quarter of the ones that he shows up for. He also has a couple of second place finishes, a 4th, a 5th, a 7th, and 8th. The amount of points that you can accumulate by winning, and as Nico did correctly identify, aptly timed events goes a long way. And that's why I think that Hatfield, I will admit, 2nd is an ambitious pick for him. But I definitely think this guy has a serious chance to be amongst the top 3 points or earners.
Yeah, I agree.
The amount of volume he's doing this year. And I'm standing by this pick.
Okay. Brian?
We're splitting hairs here because people think we're knocking on Hatfield or saying Roman Khrennikov's a bad athlete. This is the elite of the elite. This is not even good athletes, not even great athletes. This is like what Jordan's trainer calls cooler, cleaners, closers. These are the closers. Like it's the top echelon of athletes. And if he takes 5th place, he's the 5th best athlete in the world of this sport.
Brian, what were those 3 weaknesses you mentioned about Hatfield again? Can you repeat those?
Sleds, echo bike, swimming.
Okay. If you had to pick a training program to improve in those 3 movements, what would you pick? A camp.
That's what we call a loaded question in journalism.
That's a loaded question. I guess you're teeing me up to say Mayhem.
Yeah, I mean, unless you can think of something else, because I think he's in a perfect position.
I would say this: with the skill set that Austin has and has shown to have, any of the established training camps or coaches should be able to work with him in a specific enough capacity to increase. Now he's not, he's not going to go from taking 30 whatever in a swimming workout to taking 5th against guys like this year, but that's going to be one event where they'll have swimming. Fine. But the sled workouts are an interesting case point because what I was told, and I think, Patrick, you may have heard this also, is that prior to Wodapalooza, he annihilated that workout at Mayhem, and he got annihilated by it in the sand at Wodapalooza. And if he had not, he would have won Wodapalooza, and James wouldn't have won it. And then we'd be having a very different conversation today where all these very short-sighted people who just want to look at that result would say, they wouldn't be saying James won the games in Wodapalooza, and they wouldn't be making all these arguments about why he's in 6th. Instead, they'd be saying, dude, Hatfield won Wodapalooza. Yeah, this guy's legit. He could be number 2. You're right. Like, that's how much of a small thing can make a big difference in the minds of a lot of people. I think you have to throw Wodapalooza out, the Wodapalooza sled workout. Well, if you throw that out, he wins Wodapalooza. He had a first, a second, and a 9th after that. And James Sprague had one bad event as well, but it wasn't on that workout. So anyway,
he's a home run hitter. He's a home run hitter for sure. And I agree, it's going to make a big difference, especially if his home runs comes in Copenhagen, which would mean double. However, that once we get to 14th place, we're going to have the same conversation.
All right.
Well, let's talk about, okay. Well, yeah.
There we go.
Nico.
There he is.
I'll just set this up here. What Vellner has done, and I have to say Fikowski too, because it was up to this point over the last 10 years, is on par with me in terms of level of impressiveness of Matt Fraser and Rich Froning. It's a little bit different, but to be relevant in every competition that you compete at for 10 years, the mental, emotional, and life discipline that's required to do that over twice a long period of time as Fraser or Froning did it as an individual. These guys have done it while they've gotten married and had kids, and those were excuses that Rich used to get out of the sport of individual CrossFit. And Vellner continues to be a threat every single competition that he shows up to, a podium threat, I should say, unless he's sick or injured. 2020 online games, we'll throw out 2019 because that was ridiculous. And this year at Rogue are some of the very few examples you can point to where this guy is not in the conversation throughout the competition to be on the podium. And I think that continues for at least one more year.
The thing is, what if you didn't know his age? I always go back to this with athletes. Like, what if you didn't know his age? You judge him by his age, not his performance. Not you meaning general public.
Well, it wouldn't be about age. It'd still be competition experience. So you can't take age out of there.
Does age seem to be a problem?
No, but he's been doing this for a long time. At some point, time catches up with you. I'm not saying I agree with Patrick at 3. I think he's probably better than ever. I think he's in that same frame of mind as Fikowski, where he's getting better as he gets older, and he looks at it as a challenge. People probably think he's training harder because he's older. No, I think he's training smarter as he's gotten older. So I don't look at his age. I look at his experience more than anything. Is he worn down? He hasn't shown that. The only sign that we saw of him being kind of worn down was Rogue, but it wasn't because it was competition. It was because he was just tired. He was sick.
He was sick. Yeah, he was sick.
Sick. And a lot of people said, like, okay, he's done. And then he comes back at Wodapalooza and finishes on the podium, against a field that were.
Yeah, he beat Ricky again. He beat Yona again. He still beat Hatfield, despite Hatfield winning 3 of the last 4 events and taking a second. And nobody talked about it. There was nobody was like, damn, Pat did it again. It's because you almost expect it.
Yeah. We're jaded by him because of that. The only thing that will impress me about Patrick or Pat is if he wins WFP or finishes the podium. But if he finishes 4th or 5th, people will dismiss him, even against this freaking field. And I think that's sad. It's very sad, but that's just what it's. I guess it's kind of like the Patriots. Vellner's almost the Patriots without the championships. You just expect them to be there every time.
The Buffalo Bills of the early 90s.
The Bills, or you could say the Atlanta Braves. I mean, you could use whatever. Insert, ultimate Cinderella, runner-up. That's what Vellner is, and it's unfortunate because he's garnered just about every major championship that you
plus
can.
This point from Ironically Fit that I think Nico can resonate with.
Yeah, but I also think this year he doesn't have the distractions that he had over the last couple of years. Moving in the middle of a season, building a house, dealing with kids, dealing with being a father, stuff like that. He's finally settled in. So he's actually got a probably first time in probably 2 or 3 years, a settled training regimen where he can just sit there and just train. And it's great that he does it from home because then he spends time with his child, his wife. He's got his family, his wife. Everyone's close. I think if anything, we're going to see a much more focused Patrick Vellner than we've seen over the last 2-3 years.
And I think going back to Rogue, obviously the main story was Patrick was being sick. He was sick at Rogue, and he took 9th place. Just take that into consideration. I was with him the whole weekend. He couldn't eat. So he was actually sick, not just like an excuse stuff. And he didn't even say he was sick.
No, he did not at all.
The funny thing about Rogue, though, if we go back to the performance, he did not have a Patrick Vellner signature event where he bombed out. So what would have happened if Patrick Vellner would have been 100%? He would have probably taken 3rd, however. But yeah, it's interesting to see. And he didn't do that much at Wodapalooza. I think he's not making those big mistakes. And this being an 15 event season? No, it's more. How
it's
many
going to
events?
be over 20, at least 21 scoring.
What? Right. And it's always better for Patrick the more events there is. Yes. And let's hope there's not a kayak and he'll be fine.
Well, I know we going back to last year.
They released their movement list. There was no kayak on the movement list.
Is there no kayak? Oh, good for Pat. He's all excited about that.
Go back to the games, the first event, we all know what happened, but at the end of the day, Vellner finished 33rd in that event, and he finished 5th overall. He was tied with Jason Hopper in points. So, again, you erase that first event, he's on more likely he's on the podium.
Right.
So, all right, let's move on to 4, 5, 6. I grouped these 3 guys together. They are Dallin Hopper, Jason Hopper, and James Sprague. I don't know if they like being grouped together or not. I don't know if they deserve to be grouped together or not, but I do see all 3 of them as similar in this conversation in a couple regards. They're young, they're big, they're incredibly talented. They all are training with Brute right now. And it appears that they're all planning to do both the CrossFit Games season and the WFP season with podium aspirations and maybe championship aspirations in mind for both of those things. So, Nico, just sticking to these 3 guys, do you like the fact that I grouped them together here, or do you see some separation between them?
Well, they're the same avatar, basically. In terms of height, I think the other guys may have a few pounds on James. I'm not sure. James put on a little bit of weight, so he looks stronger. The other guys are a little bit leg stronger than James. But to me, Jason is the rawest talent. He's the number 1 draft pick here. However, Dallin is the one who performs best, and Dallin is the one I have who could win whatever the world championship is. We're going to go back to that later on, but he is the one who could beat Adler. I don't see any of the 2 others beating Adler in a head-to-head competition within a 3-year span. I can see Dallin doing that. I'm not saying it happens. I'm saying he has the potential to make it happen. So I like Dallin being on top, but this is a coin flip. It's so close. And again, events going to play into the results. Who's going to get the right event at the right time? James has home run potential. Jason has home run potential. Dallin, that's the only knock on Dallin. He has less home run potential than the other top tier athletes, and that might, at the end of the day, be the thing that cost him a CrossFit Games title or a World Fitness Championship title. At the end of the day, I want to see Dallin just knock one out the park. Something we didn't expect, where he's just like, I'm not competing with you, you're all competing with me. And I haven't seen that with him since the teen division.
PC, thoughts on the three of these guys? Is there one that you like more than the other?
Wow. I to kind of answer your initial question was like, what do we think about them grouped together? Yes, they are grouped together. But if I was them, I think eventually they have to hate it at some point. You got to break away from that pack. I mean, it's great for the sport that those three young guys are up and coming. They have a great relationship. There is a lot of back and forth with them. I would even throw like Justin Maderos has kind of inserted himself in there as well with the relationship. But obviously, the three of them, all three are brute strength athletes now. I don't know how Matt Torres does it, but he's going to have to balance coaching three of the top 5 athletes in the world, just in the World Fitness Project alone. But of the three, I really do like Dallin just because of his all-roundedness. And you're right, Nico, that he doesn't have a home run, but neither does someone like Jason. Jason might be a tad a little bit stronger, I think, whereas Dallin might be better in, say, something like, double unders. So I think they kind of balance each other out, but I like the edge. I love giving the edge a little bit to Dallin just because he's more well-rounded than Jason. And I think he's less prone to make mistakes. And he's used to the coaching style. So this is going to be a whole new coaching style for Jason to kind of adapt to. Whereas Dallin's been with Torres since he was freaking 14 years old.
Is Torres coaching Hopper?
Coach L is coaching Hopper.
But still, it's still
adjustment. But it's important. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's still an adjusting period. That's what I mean. I hope Coach L is a really good coach, so maybe there isn't no adjustment period. But right now, yeah, I have no problem with these guys being grouped together. If I'm these three guys, I would have a problem with being grouped together. So hopefully, one of these guys just kind of. And I think James has separated himself from the other two, but yet if you ranked them behind them, even though he's had the most success in the two of the 3 biggest competitions prior to this.
Nico, any other thoughts about these guys before we move on?
No. I think it's the ranking is fair, and any given Sunday they can each jump Pat Vellner and Austin Hatfield, and they're in contention. They're podium contenders for sure.
Well, according to you, every given Sunday they will jump Austin Hatfield.
No, but they will more Sundays than not, and thereby they will beat him.
Fair enough. 7 and 8, I put Ricky Garard and Jay Crouch. I think for the better part of the last 3 years, Ricky has gotten a lot of recognition globally and worldwide relative to Jay Crouch, but I have seen that gap shrinking between them. I'm not sure what it is with Ricky. And again, it's kind of your question about the Sarah Sigmundsdottir thing is echoing in my mind of like, he's been so close and we thought that it was like a given that he would get to the top and he just can't get there. He keeps having either a mistake or an injury or something that's preventing him from finishing the job. And while Jay Crouch hasn't been that as close, he just seems to be like consistently chipping away at this top group of guys. And so for me, with Ricky sliding back and Jay sliding up, they ended up right next to each other here.
Yeah, that window's closing on Ricky. And I think he knows that. And whereas Jay still has a lot of, Jay's what, 24, 25 now?
25.
25, yeah. He's still he's been in the sport for a while, but age-wise, and we use that whole age again. But Jay is doing really. Sorry, I think I said Bailey Martin, but I meant Jay Crouch. But I think Ricky, he lost those 4 years. He's lost other years, not lost, but he's had injuries kind of hold him back. And I have my own personal thoughts when it comes to the change in camps. But he made a move, and he's hoping this move will maybe help in that closing of that window or that closing of that gap, because he also has to see that there's the Austin Hatfields, the Jason Hoppers, the Dallin Peppers. They made a huge jump between when he was on the podium the next year. Those guys, that same year that he made the podium, those guys were, they're at the bottom half of the leaderboard, and now they've just been chipping away, and now he's seen them surpass them. So there might be some panic there for him. mean, but at the same time, Ricky's Ricky. The guy, I never put anything past him. The guy has done some amazing stuff on the competition floor. We saw that in our opening event at Rogue with him and Adler. So, it's tough to say, but
Nico, I can tell you're chomping at the bit.
I'm fuming here. First of all, Ricky is a fellow Philadelphia Eagles fan, so go Birds. We always had the expression "hungry dogs run faster," and come on, putting Jay, all the love, buddy, but you're not in the same conversation as Ricky Garard. Ricky almost got the better of Fraser. Sure, he got a ban and all that, but still, the athlete's still there. He has gone toe-to-toe with Adler. He's won events at Rogue. He's beaten Adler head-to-head. He's won Wodapalooza multiple times. This is too... Does history not teach us anything? Like, Ricky is not in the same category as Jay Crouch. Make another category then. It's just not fair. I do get the points that he's gotten closer, but even at Rogue, there's 50 points between him, and Ricky had some glaring weaknesses that he needs to fix that. And I don't know who's coaching him at Proven. Nick?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, who's his coach? Is it?
I believe Shane is coaching him.
Okay, Shane is coaching him, but Shane knows this, and Shane knows he has to fix Ricky's vertical pressing. It's a disaster, and it has been at the games in 2021, 2022. Wait, 1 year he didn't compete. Anyways, but it's a disaster. It was a disaster at Rogue, and it was bad at Wodapalooza, and it cost him a podium at Wodapalooza. So he has that big of a weakness. Vertical pressing and especially combined with other shoulder fatiguing workouts.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, because the other thing that I think is the weakness for Ricky is his inability to say no to competition. He didn't.
Yes. But now
he's planning to compete as much as anyone this year. And if you're planning to compete as much as anyone, then you don't have the time frame that's needed to make the improvement on those glaring weaknesses and to give your body the chance to heal and recover and perform optimally at any one of these competitions. He's constantly battling against himself more than anything else.
Yeah. Sure, that could be his demise for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that the reason why he's doing that? We've had discussions about this, and I think I've had discussions with Ricky about this. I mean, do you think it's because he sees that window closing and he needs to take advantage and make up for it as much as he can? That's a question.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe, but yes. Hopefully, the Proven Camp is gonna talk some sense into him and say, hey, what do you want to do now? Do you want to win, or do you want to get a lot of top fives?
Well, let me throw this out there. If I were doing a power rankings at this day, right now, the guys that I thought were the fittest on earth, I'd probably have Ricky third behind Dallin and Jeff, because I did a whole exposition on how if you take away the strict handstand push-up wall walk workout and the vertical or horizontal, whatever it was, horizontal pegboard, he was 10 points behind Jeff at Rogue. The guy has everything that you said about him, his athletic prowess, his competitive nature. It's elite. This guy is amongst the best we've ever seen. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that he does have these holes, that he doesn't set up his training year to make sure that he can improve on those things. That he's, why did he do so poorly at the games? He got another injury. I mean, yes, it was rolling his ankle, but these things keep happening to him. And you can't just ignore them when you're trying to project how he's going to do over the course of 7-8 months.
But I'm giving the Proven Camp the benefit of the doubt and saying, what would I do? And I'm expecting them to do what I would do and better, because that's their job. It's not my job to be a coach. And I remember, it's no knock on Justin Kotler, his former coach. He said when he got his mountain biking injuries, you got to let Ricky be Ricky. And I'm like, no, you can't let Ricky be Ricky.
Well, the problem with Ricky is that he forces it and comes back for the Rogue qualifier, then goes the Rogue Invitational, then does Dubai, then does Wodapalooza, both individual and team. And it's just when's the body recovering? And we started this whole conversation by talking. And then you can't go
mountain biking. You can't go mountain biking. That's it's not even a.
And you cannot compete every month and beat Jeff Adler and beat Pat Vellner. And one of those other three guys is going to beat him. And Hatfield and Sprague, these guys are younger than him, so they're going to be more resilient over a short period of time, and they don't have the history of a broken shoulder and a rolled ankle and a bad back and everything else that Ricky has. As good as his ceiling is through the roof, but there's just these things that keep him from ever reaching.
I like what you're saying, because I can actually feel your frustration of Ricky not performing to his optimal capability. But I'm going to go back to the NFL and say the best quarterback in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes. The second best is the injured Patrick Mahomes. And an injured Ricky Garard is still going to beat Jay Crouch.
Well, he has so far, and let's see. I mean, it'll be fun. I do think this picture of Jay Crouch is amazing. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
And Jay is in that same camp. He is only 25 years old. He has an incredible depth and wealth of competition experience. He usually doesn't overdo it in terms of competitions during the year, but he has started to travel out as he's gotten more opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see what the competition year looks like for him. You
brought up the point about traveling. I'm very interested to see what traveling does for him and Maddie. Because obviously, especially Maddie, which we'll talk about in the women's rankings, but outside of the game season, they don't travel that much. Ricky does do a lot of traveling. He knows when to go. He knows what his body has. He knows how to prepare himself. He knows how to prepare himself for competition when he travels. He knows when.
Lost Patrick there for a second.
Oh,
that's okay.
Let's move on.
We will need him. We will need him for the back end stuff.
Oh yeah,
but it's actually a variable that we haven't thrown into the equation yet. Is the travel, and I don't know what Ricky and Jay are planning to do in terms of traveling to the States and Europe, however many times this year. But like for their sake, hopefully when they come for the games, they can just stay that whole month through the WFP up at the end of August, because the going back and forth does also add up.
Don't you think Ricky is going to stay from the first event through the games and the second event? He's going to stay in Nashville?
Maybe, but it's like, what if then there's Tier SoCal? Does he stay for that? And then there's this. Like, I don't know how long they can stay for every time that they come over here. So there's, it's a variable that they have to consider. That is, and always has been, a challenge for athletes that are based out of Australia. It's just extremely far away. We talked a little bit about Roman, Nico, in the perfect world where Roman actually competes healthy at these competitions this year. What do you see as his top end potential?
First place.
First place.
If Roman Khrennikov is the Roman Khrennikov of, and it's not that long ago, of 2023. 2023 is a year and a half ago. People in CrossFit, and including you, Brian, have a very short-term memory, very bad short-term memory. Roman Khrennikov was on a trajectory of winning the CrossFit Games. I still think Adler would have beaten him, but he was on the cusp of winning the CrossFit Games when he made a completely his own fault, tripped on a sandbag and broke his ankle. He was winning the CrossFit Games. It's a year and a half ago. Like then he had some injuries. It's not like he's stopped training. It's not like he's shown he can't compete anymore. Roman Khrennikov is still the one guy out there that has that. He's the one guy I would love to see on his top level compete against Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, look, Roman at his best is extremely lethal. Yeah, and for basically the entirety of his competition career, once he got to the U.S. through that performance at the games, which ironically enough came on a ring muscle up workout, it was only ring muscle ups that were preventing him from winning competitions. Every event there was a ring muscle event. Every event it was his worst event. Every event it prevented him from winning, and then he had a great event with ring muscle ups. Granted, it was with the sandbags over the object, which is obviously gonna be a huge strength for his, but still, like you had and he finally had a good ring muscle up event. We didn't get to see him finish, and it hasn't been quite the same since. He had a good semifinal performance, but he's still just being there on the sidelines, watching him up close. It just still didn't look like the killer Roman that I remembered from the previous year. And this ranking is solely based off the fact that I have no idea what he's going to be capable of doing this year.
Oh, so I get what you're saying, Brian, but basically you're saying you're seeing in his eyes that killer instinct is gone, and we're seeing complacency, which I agree on.
I think it's not trusting your body. I think it's knowing that because that hip injury was was lingering, was coming.
He doesn't look like the same. Back when he couldn't compete, he wasn't allowed in the United States. Like he had this, and sorry about the Russian comparison. He had that Ivan Drago type thing, and it was like he just wanted to kill you. It felt like he's the nicest guy in the world, but he had that look on his face. It's like he's coming in here and he's going to destroy this workout. And you're not going to allow me in the United States. I'm going to win every event outside of the United States. And he did. And
look at how funny these two comments are. It just seems like he's not in the right place based on his socials. He's been pumping out content and look locked in.
But the thing is, it's not him doing it. He's not doing it. He's not sitting there with his phone posting anything. He doesn't want to do that. So he has a great potential, but yes, he has a downward trajectory, and it's not looking good. And I want to see him come back to what he was capable of. And you know what? If I have to pick one athlete who's not competing in Copenhagen, I'm picking Roman. Ooh. Because he most likely will compete at the games, do the whole season, and chances are injuries, if they happen once, the injury, the chances just get greater and greater. So if I have to pick one person not competing at the finals, it's going to be Roman.
I put a break in the rankings after this. The next group I called Looking for Opportunities. And I'm going to guess that there's some question marks in this group. It may be not the group that you would expect. We'll talk about them, but there's 6 athletes here: Justin Maderos, Jonakoski, Luca Jukic, Guy Maderos, Yellow Jose, and Sam Quant. Let's start with Justin, just because he's right there at 10. I'll open by saying this. Up until these rankings, at every other ranking for a competition that Justin has been involved in, I have continued to give him the nod as of an athlete who still has the potential to challenge for the podium against any field in the world. And I just don't know if that's the case anymore.
It's not. It's just not. It's just not. And he's proven it time over time. And it goes back to what he just said about Roman. Does he want it? Does he wake up every morning saying, like, going back to Matt Fraser living on his parents' couch, like he had one purpose? One purpose. Does Justin want it? Or is he... I mean, he's a great athlete. He's won the CrossFit Games twice. He's podiumed. He's a great athlete. But is that his sole purpose? And in order to win the CrossFit Games, win the World Fitness Project, you can't... It has to be 100%. Of it has to be your sole being, and I think he had his time where it's like this void of like not having Matt Fraser, and he just played his cards right. But he's not a home run hitter.
Do you like this spot for him? I mean, I still think he's good enough to be in the middle of this group.
Yeah, he could take 8th. He could take 15th. Depends on how he feels.
Really, I mean, look, despite everything else, he hasn't taken 15th. Like he still was 8th at Rogue.
Yeah.
He still did win the West Coast semifinal. He's still got some serious potential, but there's just something missing that keeps him out of that group we just talked about.
That thing where you go into workout, and we always talked about Matt Fraser. He won workouts before they started. And I don't think Justin has that anymore. He never had it. He outright beat people, and he did it greatly. And he's an amazing athlete. And I think he could take. I wouldn't be surprised if he podiums at one of the events. No, but most likely I'll see him podium on the 3rd event and then jumping into top 6 or whatever. But no, I don't see him being a contender. And yeah, 10th place is fair, given the competition he's stacked against.
The next 2 guys on the list are 2 of the guys that you had specifically told me you wanted to dive in a little bit on, Nico. First up, we have Jonakoski. I put him at 11th here. Just thoughts on this projection relative to the field and where you think he's at in his career overall.
I think I'm a little bit confused about your pick here because, and it goes back to the Austin Hatfield, not to bring him up again, but like, why is he here? So he did well at Rogue, and we're gonna kind of discard Waterpalooza. where he took 5th, obviously, but he didn't even qualify for the games. I love Janne, and he knows this. So, but I kind of need to see him do it again. But yeah, he's the athlete who has the potential to compete against the best. But I think based off what happened that he didn't qualify for the games, he needs to reprove it. And he started that journey with a great finish at Rogue. He took 10th. But yeah, taking 10th at Rogue, maybe this is the right spot. Maybe it's a little bit high, but then again, I'm also having a hard time with putting the people beneath him above him. So I just think he's one to be careful where you put him.
Yeah. What I wrote about him in the article was that if you look at his last 12 months of competition, he won the Open, he won quarters. I think he was competing sick at semis, and at least the first day or day and a half, he missed the games. Takes 10th at Rogue, which I think is a good finish for him. 5th at Wadapalooza. All the guys that beat him are guys that we've already listed on this list, and he did beat guys that are up and coming: Anyola Kai, Harry Lightfoot, Jack Farlow, who are not signed athletes, but he also beat Guy Maderos, Luca Jukic, and a host of other Moritz Fiebig, et cetera, talented athletes. I know it was only a 6-event competition, but we have 2 of those coming up. And I am throwing out the semifinals from last year as a blip relative to good performances the rest of the year. I still think that at 30 years old, Jonne is one of the best guys in Europe and can threaten for a top 10 spot against this field. PC?
Uh,
You with us?
Yeah. They just did the weightlifting 101 camp this past weekend. And what I'm hearing out of that camp is that this is the best Koski, any of those, and this is coming from athletes and people there that saw that this version of Koski they're seeing right now is the best version.
That's what everybody was advertising prior to semifinals about him as well.
Yeah, that's my knock on that.
And so and here's the thing. This is a good contextual point. You could be the best version of yourself in training, and everyone can say that about you. You still have to show up and do it. And Koski has done that way more often than not for 10 years.
Yeah. But now, the thing with the WFP season is he has multiple chances. It's not like, hey, he wasn't less than 100% on day 1 at semifinals, and he had to play catch up the rest of the time, and his season's done. I have no doubt if he would have been at the games, he would have finished probably top 8 if he was at the games. And I think with something like the WFP season, he has 3 opportunities to prove himself to be amongst the best. I'm okay with 11th here. I think he definitely has the potential to be better than that, based on what I'm hearing, based on what other people are saying. And some of these people saying this are actually in the WFP that we'll be discussing. And just
Yellow Host and BKG.
Yes, and maybe Victor Hoffer.
Yeah, but I think one of the things about just going to say about Janne is yes, he does look great, and he again has home run potential. He has certain events he can do, not just swimming. He has certain events where he can knock out a top 2, top 3. So yeah, I like to see him up there. And you just said he's one of the best athletes in Europe. I think there's no discussion. He is the best athlete in Europe, and I don't see any other beating him. And he's overtaken that spot, obviously due to tragic circumstances. But right now, he is the best functional fitness athlete in Europe.
All right, and the second best one is
no, it's not.
It's this was actually an interesting one because Luca made a comment on this post yesterday. He said, "This ranking is 8 spots higher than I deserve and 11 spots lower than I'm going to finish."
That's so much math. I don't know what that means.
So he's saying he's going to finish in first?
Yes, he says.
Okay, but then you have to discard that because now he's just... Sorry, Luca.
Wait.
That's dumb.
All of these athletes should have the mentality that they can win and should be training to win. You also can have a realistic mindset when you approach this, and the realistic part of this comment is based on achievements, he would show up 19th or 20th on a power rankings. And I think we can all agree on that.
Did he text you or actually comment this online? Did he put it out there? I'm going to win.
On there.
It's on there somewhere. He commented.
I'm sorry, but that I get it. I get it. And you every game you compete to win. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you're not competing, you're losing. All that stuff. I get it. But there is a line. There's a line between knowing and being just blatantly like, that's not going to happen. Like, he's never beaten any of these athletes in a live competition. He's a great athlete. I saw him in Dubai. He competed with such poise, and
he did beat some of them in live competition. Actually, he beat Jonikoski the last time that they competed.
Yes, he did.
Wait,
Brian, you just said I'm throwing that competition out the window, and now you're using it a minute later.
Yeah. It's just it's a fact.
What?
He did.
But you just said I'm throwing it out the window.
For Yona, I am.
But okay, but not for Luca.
Not if you're going to say that he's never beaten any of them.
Maybe he has. Maybe there's been outliers where he's beaten them. But
no.
to say he's going to jump these people.
On paper, he's the least deserving of these invites, and he's the lowest has the lowest achievements of any of the athletes on this field, except for maybe Victor Hoffer. So the question obviously is, why do I have him ranked here? And I will admit that there is a little bit of personal bias in this one for me of rooting for the guy. But there's also the fact that I spent some time with him this year, and that I got a chance to see what I believe is the top potential for him in Dubai, which does, and it's not that the field was extremely impressive there compared to many of the other fields that we're going to be talking about, and especially compared to this field. But it was everything about that version of Luca Jukic was different than the Luca Jukic that I had breakfast with and saw compete in Miami from an emotional and mental standpoint. And if you go back to the original bullet points that I laid out for criteria that I was considering on this, where these athletes are focusing their energy matters. Yeah. And in the case of Luca, we talked about it a little bit with Jeff Adler, where his life is built to support his pursuits and dreams and competitive desires. And that's what Luca has in his life right now. He doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't want to do that isn't specifically focused on training. And from the moment that he got back from Wodapalooza, he has been very consistent in his messaging. Receipts taken, and I have one objective this year, and it's to dominate at WFP events. Now, whether you think he can dominate or not, what I'm saying is he's going to perform at a level that most of us have never seen him perform at yet, and that is going to be better than what the expected outcome should be for this guy.
Hey, Patrick, can I ask you something?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on Lago Giraldes from Argentina?
Lago Giraldes from Argentina, 6'6". WCA.
Yeah, but I'm asking PC. I'm not asking the expert of all experts. And there's a reason I picked him.
I mean, I don't really have many thoughts about him.
Brian, why do I ask about him?
Because he beat Luca by one spot at Wodapalooza.
Yeah. And I mean, so we have to consider that Luca he does some stuff amazing, but the last time we saw him was at Wodapalooza, and that was a lot of travel, obviously. It wasn't that much travel for Dubai. And he didn't perform well. Then he also competed at the team. I can't remember how they fared, but he didn't perform well there. We were in Dubai, Brian, you and me, and we both saw him winning that. It was so emotional. It was one of the best things I've seen in the sport of fitness, to see him win that event. I loved it. But I'm not going to let my emotions and the love for everything and what he's doing carry over to say he's going to do better. Is it way too high? No, he's not going to finish 20th. He has a way of competing he's gonna rack up some points, and he's gonna find a way. Getting up to top 12, that's a reach.
You'd like to see him maybe more around 15, 16?
15th, 16th, but then again, we don't know who's going to jump into the conversation, and that's going to be the outlier
this
for
is
me.
just,
Amongst these 20. He's not that far off, but I have a major issue, especially not necessarily the guy right after him, but the other two Europeans. But of the Europeans, I have him 4 out of 5. I think there's 5 Europeans, right?
Yeah.
I look at this position. I think this is peak. This is like if all things go well. I will say Luca has an advantage over some other people in this field in terms of volume. Like he's used to competing at a lot of competitions. He's done that. So WFP season is going to be nothing. However,
he has in previous years.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
And he's not planning to compete the same way that he has in the previous years.
Exactly. And he started that, and me and Luca, I had the honor of me and him flew on the same flight from Miami back to Frankfurt, and we're on the same flight. And I had a chance to talk to him about it, and he wasn't happy with his performance, but he also told me he's like, I wasn't training for Wodapalooza. I wasn't focused. I was, he just he just announced getting a new coach with John Singleton. So he hadn't really fully integrated with that yet. And there was a little bit, you guys were there at Dubai. It was so emotional. It was something that he put his mind to, and he accomplished it. Take away the field. I don't care about the field. The guy went out, he did set his mind out and did it, and accomplished it. And it wasn't even close. I mean, he pretty much won it pretty handily.
Yeah.
He did not have that same focus and that same attention towards Wodapalooza. Does that mean he would have won Wodapalooza? No. I don't think he'd be the first person to admit that he would win Wodapalooza. But the thing is, he has that confidence just like his brother did. And he's learning that because he was one of the more of the two. He was a silent one. So he's learning. And I have no problem with him at 12. I think 12 is best case scenario, but I also see anywhere from 15 to 16 as well. So
yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No. I think it's a totally fair conversation, and I don't even blame people for accusing me of personal bias with the ranking of Luca Jukic. I'll admit to that to some degree. I just think that he has I don't think we've seen his top potential yet against a field like this, and I think we're going to see that this year. And let's see how good it ends up being for him. Maderos
hitting home runs.
I think we have seen his top potential, Maderos. We saw the games in 2021.
He took 7th place. He took 10th place the year after that. He pretty much does good at most competitions he shows up to. 7th at Rogue this year. The other time he did Rogue, where did he finish that other time? It was around 10th. And, it was 5th, in 2021. Do you think
freak of an athlete?
He always, every time that the power rankings comes out, there's always this question around Guy. And half the people think that he's nowhere near as good as the ranking suggests. And then there's other half of people that think he's like the best thing on earth.
Put his favorite workouts, stack all of them in Copenhagen. I put him 6. Put all of them in the United States, and I put him 15th. His season matters so much about the programming and when the programming happens due to the point system. He's the most lopsided athlete we have in this field. And he's not going to surprise anyone in any given event. He's going to do exactly what we all think.
This is what I'm suggesting.
Surprises.
Because we know that there's going to be 30 guys in this field. Nadine brings up the idea of challengers here. What I'm suggesting is that even against the top 30 men on earth over this many events, with the strengths and skill sets that he has, he finishes in the top half of the field.
Yeah. Somehow. There is just there's a mathematical thing to this, and it really matters for a guy like him, less so than a guy like Vellner. It's going to matter when the events happen because of the double points in Copenhagen in the event final. But, we all know Guy. We know what he can do. We know what he can't do. And there's no hate here. It's just like he's good at certain things. He has fast twitch muscle fibers. I have none of those. So I'm jealous. He does some things very good, and he
I
does
think
other stuff very bad.
I think people do realize how strong he is.
He's really strong, but I'd love to go for a run with him and say goodbye after a few seconds. He doesn't have he's never gonna be able to
Right,
compete
but
with
the
these
nature
guys
of-
in cardio events.
No, but the nature of the competition's styles that we're accustomed to seeing is that deficiency is going to be shown a third of the time compared to his strengths being shown.
Yes, so
and that's what keeps him relevant in these conversations.
Yeah, so 13th is perfect.
We have a fan favorite for sure in the 14th spot here. Justice for Yele. Yella should be higher. Yella is definitely top 10. Nico, do you see Yella as a top 10?
Give me the workouts and I'll tell you, because I think the year that he finished 10th at the CrossFit Games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or did he break top 10?
Anyways, 10th or 11th. I think it was 10th.
Either way, he tied with BKG for points, as I remember. But BKG had that event where he just kind of like deadlifted
the Olympic total. Yeah.
Yeah, he just took the floor. So obviously BKG would have beaten him, and Yella's doing great. Yella has some home run stuff he can do very well, but he's getting better. It's peaks and valleys, right? And he's closing those valleys, so it's not as bad. I need to see it once again from Yella, and I need to see him, especially on like inverted stuff. I need to see him do better. I know his coach very well, and he's doing everything in his power to change that. And I'm excited to see Yella, because with a guy like Andre Houdet, he's gonna pound those weaknesses, and he's gonna find a way. And Yella is just he's gonna show up prepared. And this resembles more of a season that we've seen before, and I think that's good for a guy like Andre, who's the most structured guy I've ever met. So I'm excited about Yella, but and I can make arguments to put him in the top 10. I think he's better than Luca for sure. Other people he's for sure better than. I can't make any certified argument there, so I'll put him number 12, number 13, depending on the day.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair assessment. Let's go to 15. Excuse me. Last guy in this section, Sam Quant. Quant is generally a guy who's very quiet, kind of flies under the radar. He will pop up and have some incredibly good performances or finishes in competitions. He oftentimes backs us up with kind of mediocre performances in competition. I mean, this is as good of a group of 20 as he's gonna, compete against. And I don't know. I don't see him as a top 10 guy against this field.
Well, the thing about him is he's either Superman or Clark Kent, and we've seen him show up as Superman at the CrossFit Games, and we've seen him show up as Clark Kent. So it's night and day with him. But it seems like the later years, it's been more of a mixture of the two, and he's not a threat to the top 10 anymore. He's a great athlete, but there's just so much that goes into being in the absolute elite, and I think we're having pretty evenly placed there.
My opinion of Quant is that he's the best pan check right now.
Okay.
He reminds me of like Scott Pancheck.
Really?
I mean, just in terms of like the athletic ability, it's like, you take away his odd season finishes where he usually places, he places bad in odd years, and then even years he always does well. He finished sixth last year at the games. But he's just one of those guys. Is like, he's so unassuming, but he's there. The thing is, every athlete, especially every athlete's aware of Samuel Quant, but the fans aren't, because athletes will be looking. They know, like, if you talk to Noah, you talk to a Chandler, you talk to, even a Jason Hopper, they're aware that where Samuel Quant's at, and they know they they see him in that corner warming up, doing those dynamic warm ups, and they're like, all right, I'm gonna have to watch out what he's doing. Keep him right there because he'll sneak up on you. And
he's one of the athletes that I don't actually know this answer to if he's going to participate in the games season or not.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
but he's like the Reebok Nano. Every other season he's good, then he's bad. So yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we haven't heard much from him. But
I'll answer that question. Is he lucky to get a pro card? Yes and yes. I wouldn't necessarily. He's right there on the cusp of being a top 20 athlete. And then we go back to, well, is he a top 10 or top 5 promotional athlete?
Sam Quant's ranking is 12th on the Rogue rankings and 10th worldwide on the Apollo rankings.
Oh, really? Then no, then he's not that lucky. I think then he deserves to be there by athletic performance, but then other people got there maybe by athletic performance and social media presence.
Yeah. He's I think he's more than deserving. He's one of those guys that's more than deserving to be one of the first inaugural signed athletes. It shows you that they did take other things into consideration besides social media presence or popularity,
right.
Because obviously Samuel's not one of those guys. He doesn't claim to be. He's a family man that lives up in Washington. He used to. I mean, I would love to see him and James get together here and there and train a little bit more. They used to do that. I think Samuel's just very concentrated on his family and staying under the radar. Very similar to the guy that we'll talk about probably around 18th or 17th. That's kind of a similar situation. Just a couple more, a little bit more ink than Samuel Quant. But so Samuel Quant, I have no problems with him at 15. Can definitely see him, moving up into the top 12 at any point. I wouldn't be surprised even as soon as the first event in Indianapolis.
So
then it moves us to our final tier, I believe, right, Brian?
Yes. I call this last tier for the men out for vengeance because I actually had this conversation with a few athletes in Miami. I asked them if they ever
all on the same team.
If I said no. I asked these guys if there's anything that if I ever said anything that like pissed them off, and they go, "Dude, we all get pissed at you for the same thing. It's the rankings." Of course, this goes back to the mindset of Luca that Nico talked about. To be the best, you have to believe you can be the best, and if you are in this field, if you're training for this stuff as much as it takes to put into that, and somebody like me comes out here and ranks you in the bottom 5 out of a group of 20, it should piss you off. But as we always talk about, somebody's got to be down there. And these are the 5 guys that I put at the bottom of this one. I'm going to kind of open forum it with you guys to pick and choose who you want to talk about here and why. We have Noah Olson, Travis Mayer, Chandler Smith, Bjorgen Karl Gudmundsson, 4 guys who are on the back end of their careers, and Victor Hoffer, who is potentially the kind of youngest guy that we know the least about of anyone in the field. Nico?
Yeah, can I just do a heartfelt lash out at Noah Olson? I'm just going to read. I'm going to read from the Oxford Dictionary. Retirement: the action or fact of leaving one's job and ceasing to work. That is the meaning of retirement. Noah, I'm looking at you. You can see the smile on my face. I'm not lashing out actually at Noah Olson. Noah Olson retired from the sport of fitness, from CrossFit. He's not competing anymore. And then he signed with the World Fitness Project. I get it. And I get like opportunities arise and you're an athlete, but it's not about Noah. I do want to say one thing, like don't post about retirement and then come back. It is not just Noah, it's other people as well. Even other World Fitness Project people, like you can just sit out. You don't have to make an announcement. And you can do a Michael Jordan, come back, but it's different. It's just
Nico, in 2021, there was a host of athletes that were announcing retirement who were very
out.
No.
They said
before that. These guys like Lucas Esslinger and I can't remember all the people it was, but it was like people who were good during the 2015 to the 18-19 time period, and they were announcing these retirements. And I was putting together this article for Morning Chalk Up that was going to kind of identify what the lifespan of a top end competitor was. And just in the process of writing the article over maybe 2 months, half of them started competing again.
Right. Why? Like, why do you need to? And especially Noah, like, if you want to keep competing, if you want to keep doing fitness, like, why retire? Like,
I don't think he announced his retirement for individual competition. I think he still had the intention of competing on a team this year.
Some pretty big things changed.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's not I talked to Noah, and he's gonna laugh when he hears this. But yeah. Anyways, I like Noah sitting where he is. Obviously, depending on how he's going to train, he's going to still run marathons, do Ironmans. I'm going to put him dead last if he keeps doing that. He's not even. I saw him at Rogue. We just finished an Ironman. He was by far the worst athlete there. He's not the worst athlete there. So it was based off training. George Zuckervis was maybe last place, but he was injured. So that doesn't really count. Yeah, I have a major issue with you putting BKG in 19th. Like you are right now Sean Woodland in 2016.
No way, dude. Check. No way.
Wait, 15? 15. Wasn't it 15?
Okay,
Where did he put it?
Here we go. Are you ready? You want to talk about Bjorn Carl Gudmundsson? Games finishes over the last 4 years. 4th, 9th, 11th, 16th.
Yeah, eight time in
Rogue Invitational over the last 5 years. 2nd, 4th, 6th, 12th, 16th. He's fallen off. He can't compete with the best guys in the world anymore.
Let's see.
It's a consistent negative trend at the 2 most relevant competitions over a 4-year time period. I love BKG. He should be an inspiration, a role model, and a legend in this sport forever. Not just in the gym, on the field, but also in the gym. This guy is a beacon, an icon in Europe for sure, and should be internationally. But he hasn't. But his competitive prowess is trending in the wrong direction at a steep decline.
But we're gonna have like 21 events here, all scored together. He's Mr. Consistency. That's his nickname. Patrick Vellner used to say, if I'm in the middle of a workout, I look around and I see BKG to my right, I know I'm doing okay in this workout. That's my benchmark for a workout at the CrossFit Games. BKG is not going to have drastically bad finishes. He's not going to do the CrossFit Games season. He's going to focus only on this. Only on this. He was injured the whole last season. I know he's getting older. He's getting older and he's not doing as well. He's not a podium finisher anymore. He's lost that fire. He's never had a facial expression in his life. But he's lost that fire in maybe to compete with the best guys. But he is not gonna finish 19th come the end of the season. I think this is his last season, and how on earth Travis Mayer, again, it's hard because you're like, I'm lashing out at people who I think are amazing athletes, but Travis Mayer ahead of him, how?
Yeah, this is a grouping of guys that I all feel fairly similarly about 16 through 19 for different reasons, but I don't know how injured BKG was last year. All I know is that at Rogue last year, he had 1 top 10 finish and it was 9th. He's not consistent anymore in terms of having these finishes over and over again that are keeping him at the top of leaderboards. Those days are gone. Now, could he regain that? I guess, but I haven't seen it in a long enough period of time for me to put him anywhere higher than 16th on this list.
I know that. And I get the metrics and I completely support that. I'm just saying that's my one guy where I don't have a mathematical or database in the given last 18 months, or I can say this is the reason why he's going to finish higher. And I'm not even putting him in the top 10. I'm just saying 19th is too low. But we are, the lower we get on the leaderboard, the harder it gets to project people because there's more and more mathematical variables. So I'll probably put him 15th, 14th, whatever. But yeah, I could see him on a bad day. If he shows up the same version as last year, he's going to finish, 19th, 20th, and that will be his last season.
Brian, if you had to do these rankings for 3-man teams, where would the team of Travis, Chandler, and Noah rank?
It doesn't matter what the other teams are; they would still be in the top 3.
Yeah,
that's good answer. I'm going to talk about Chandler on this. I know Chandler didn't have the best rogue, and he typically does well for rogue. That could be attributed to a bunch of factors. Chandler will never make excuses for himself. Chandler's the guy who's like, hey, I just wasn't good enough. I can make excuses for him because that's just what I do. But I don't think Chandler is too far off from what – remember, 2023, Chandler was in a podium spot up until the last 2 events. And he still finished, 6th overall.
Yeah.
And then he decided to step away because he wanted to do team. He wanted to spend more time with his wife. He wanted to do other things. He wanted to do team with Noah. It didn't end up working out. So he'd already made the commitment, and he wanted to try something different. Chandler knows he only has one body, one life in this time that he wants to experience as much as possible. I think Chandler's going to be fine. I actually think Chandler is probably going to finish. Maybe he's my dark horse to finish top 10, believe it or not. And I know that a lot of people said there's some bias there, but I've seen how great of an athlete Chandler is. Like he's going to be now. His focus was going to be High Rocks this year, and we all know Chandler is.
Let's put Nico on the spot here. If I told you that December 25th has come and one athlete between Luca Jukic and Chandler Smith did manage to finish in the top 10, who do you think it is?
Chandler Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Luca doesn't have the potential to finish in the top 10. Yeah. Not in this field.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's not bias. It's just knowing the type of person he is and the focus. Like when Chandler puts his mind to something, he's going to accomplish it. And he may not win, but guess what? You're going to be looking back and like that guy gave his all. And there's never been a moment we looked at Chandler like Chandler cashed out or his heart's not into it. If his heart's not into it, he's not going to do it. Chandler wouldn't have signed up with World Fitness Project if he didn't think he could do well in it. He's not signing up to finish last.
Well, no, and that's what's so fun about this is none of these guys signed up to finish last.
Sure. Well, I mean, no, sure, but
I really think that even come the first event in Indianapolis, we're going to see all of these guys showing up there with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder at the least.
But the reality is these guys have signed contracts, so they're guaranteed money no matter what. Whether they finish 20th,
that's not going to matter.
That was actually that question came up.
For Chandler, it doesn't. It's never been about the money for Chandler. Chandler's fine.
That's easy to say when you have money. That's not discussion.
Well, I get that. But I'm just saying, it's like, but Chandler, for Chandler, I think.
No, but Nico, you can talk about this. What do you guys think about people saying these athletes won't even try at WFP because they're already guaranteed money? T-Bird disagrees. She thinks they're athletes and they always want to win.
100%.
Oh, 100%. Like, that's a whole definition of being an athlete. You don't care. Once you step into the arena, I get in the off season, you have agents, you have contracts and shit. When you step onto that floor, I've tried that when I was biking. Like, I don't care what's going on. Like, you try to win. There's two different. You can exercise. That's to participate, or you can play sports. If you play sports, you play for one reason. You play to win, and I don't care what the money is. The money and all that stuff comes afterwards. When you're in the middle of the game, no one cares. Tom Brady didn't think about the money when he was playing. He thought about the next play, the next play, the next play. And afterwards, it was pretty nice.
The spoils go to the victors. It's like when you're out there competing, these are all athletes. And the reason why they're doing this is because they believe so much in professionalizing this. A lot of these athletes are kind of being looked at as martyrs or they're being like, oh, they're turning their back on CrossFit. No, they're just trying to professionalize the sport. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think what they're doing is in some instances admirable. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's not admirable because they're getting paid out. We don't know what they're getting paid. We've heard rumors. We've heard some athletes getting as low as $20,000 for the whole season to some maybe in the 6 figures. We don't know the exact day. We don't know the pay structure. But the thing is, at the end of the day, they're just trying to make a living. That cannot be hot, and it's just not. They got to make their living consistently, especially these younger athletes. So for them to show up 1 year and just like, oh, I have a guaranteed $30,000 contract, I'm good. No, you want to get that next contract because next year, if this season goes like it's planned, and next year they have 5-6 events, that prize pool is going to grow even more. So that, guess what?
Right.
That professionalism of the athlete, where you have 20 pro cards, year 3, maybe that expands to 40 pro cards because it's expanded so much and the money is coming in. That's how you expand a sport. That's how you professionalize a sport. Bravo to Will. Bravo for these guys for doing something like that. There will be mistakes along the way. And I'm pretty sure they've admitted to it. I haven't listened to their podcast. They're not going to get things right. But the thing is, at least, they're trying something new, and they have people that behind them backing that believe it. And
let's see the beautiful pictures of
athletes believe in it too. Sorry.
I want to see the beautiful pictures of Chandler and BKG.
Oh, okay. Well, I already showed you BKG.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question? I was sitting with something for a while. So let's go forward in time a little bit. It's Christmas. We're in Montreal, and Jeffrey Adler walks into a bar, and a guy walks up to him and says, "Hey, so what do you do for a living?" And he says, "Yeah, I play sports. I'm a world champion." "Oh, nice! You're the world champion? You're the best in the world in your sports?" Yeah. What sport? Yeah. What sport? What does Jeffrey Adler answer? What sport does Jeffrey Adler play? What is he the greatest in the world at?
If he wins the World Fitness Project and someone asks him that question, then he would probably answer World Fitness.
He's World Fitness Projecting,
or whatever they decide to title it. I mean,
okay, what do they call it? What sport is it? Does he do CrossFit?
He can say fitness or functional fitness. It doesn't matter. He can say whatever he wants.
Has there ever been a sport in the history of sports where you're the world champion and you don't even know what sport you're playing?
That's because fitness is so broad and defined. You can ask.
I thought it was defined by broad task.
That's CrossFit. CrossFit's defined that way, not fitness.
So he's not doing CrossFit anymore. So he's doing fitness racing. No, that's High Rocks.
I mean,
it is an issue, and the reason I'm saying it is it's a commercial issue, and it will be a commercial issue throughout the years. We need to figure this out. Someone needs to figure it out. What sport are we playing?
I agree, and I think as long as you have High Rocks, you have still some of the OCR races out there. You have other shoot-offs of stuff like this. As long as they're out there, or even the non-sanctioned or non-affiliated partnered CrossFit events, what are they defined as?
Because he's not the world champion in functional fitness. Someone else is.
Yeah,
Matilda Garns is the world champion.
Colin Bossard.
Colin Bossard, of course. Yeah, sorry.
Colin Bossard and Miriam Van Roer.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just interesting, and it's a major branding issue. And of course, the sport he plays is CrossFit. The issue right now is just we don't want to say he's playing CrossFit, but there's some.
Well, it's not that we don't want to say it, but maybe CrossFit. I mean, legally, he can't say it.
No, he's not allowed to say it.
Yeah, legally WFP can't say it.
James Brady is the world champion. Yeah.
So I mean but that's something the sport will have to figure out. They're gonna have to figure that out. I mean, CrossFit did a great job by trademarking and defining what fitness is in their particular discipline, just like High Rocks is doing something. But
let's go to the last guy on the list. Yes. Want to make sure to give him a little bit of love here. Victor Hoffer. There were some Victor Hoffer should be higher on this list. Others who said he has yet to impress. Someone saying I was preferring to him at semifinals last year. Basically, this is, to me, it was low-hanging fruit to put him last because he hasn't competed in 9 months. He hasn't been healthy. Like Nico said at the start of the show, he's young and already having some injury concerns. I think that the talent, the potential, it's clearly there, but there's definitely some red flags for a young athlete right now that makes it feel to me like I have to put him here and let him work his way up.
Who's his coach?
Not
he was with Vellner training at some point.
Yeah, then he went to HWPO, and I'm not sure if he's still there or not. I know
he's not there. He's not there for sure.
So I'm not sure where he's gone yet. Usually I rely on Patrick for that stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who he's with now, but go ahead. You guys talk while I source this out.
Well, the thing is, yeah, like a guy like that, the raw talent is there. Like his lifting abilities, his top end strength, his gymnastics obviously is there. His cardiovascular system is nowhere near where it needs to be, but that can change. People think it's easy to change; it takes a while. But he has the abilities to be a games athlete, a top games athlete.
Nico, is that
for
one of
sure.
the biggest misnomers? I mean, I remember Ben Bergeron saying, I can improve your aerobic system in 6 months, but to build on your strength, I need 6 years. Or to see the same level of increase in your strength, I need 6 years.
I'm not gonna lash out at Ben.
No,
He's
but
won
just
the
the
he's
concept.
won the CrossFit Games 5 times as a coach.
But the concept
But
of that, you have spent
yes,
a long amount of time training both disciplines in your life. How much more difficult is it? And are there certain athletes that are going to find almost the inverse of that to be the case?
it also depends on how your your genetics. Like
Exactly.
I don't have any fast twitch muscle fibers. I don't have any. I've had it
Yeah,
tested.
neither.
Like it's next to nothing. I'm built for skiing, like long distance skiing. But no, it takes forever, and people don't want to go there, and they do like 40 minutes cardio. Listen, you're not going to get endurance from 40 minutes. You need to sit on that bike for 4 or 5 hours, forever and ever and ever. That's going to build you that, but that's also going to cost you on the other end on the scale. That's strength. So it's super complex, and we don't see he's being coached by the training plan. That's 100% not correct. But yeah, Victor needs to build on that. But we've seen like Guima Harris, he's tried to build on that. He's not succeeded in that. We've seen other athletes who had that top end strength. Tola Maracanio. He tried, but he's yet to overcome and become a top level athlete at endurance because he's not. So it's hard to gain that. However, just like strength, once you have it and once you truly have it, it doesn't go away. It's always there. The muscle memory and the lung memory is, I think it's called, is still there. But yeah,
Got a. I think that's. I think we did a pretty good job running through the list there. There are a few housekeeping items I wanted to pull back up from you guys earlier on. This question came up in the post that we put up, and it's coming up again here. It's about drug testing for WFP. We're not the right people to ask that to. I think that information will be known in time. I would assume that they have some plan in place for that. You know, Will Moret is clearly integral in what's going on there, and he's competed at a high level and would probably understand what's appropriate and how to get those things going.
Or you have to. If you compete in Denmark in any sort of professional event, you can't. You have to by law. So you can't have it in Denmark without we're the drug testing company is allowed to show up and say we're gonna
So at the very least, that I would imagine that they have something in place and that we will learn about this as the season goes on. Will we be doing a pre-ranking show after the online qualifier and the pro field is set? And alongside that, what is the highest someone from the competitor field rank? We're going to say that probably means the challenger field rank in the WFP system. Don't the current signed athletes get double points or something? So no to the second part of that. I think this will be explained in the coming weeks more clearly, but through how I understand it is through the qualifier, 10 people can make it to the pro division to compete against these 20 athletes. There's 20 other people that can make it as a challenger, and the top 10 plus those 20, so the top 30 would be technically called pros. They all can compete for points and payouts. The other 20 are still competing for points. I'm not sure if there's payouts in that division or not, but they get points that do count towards that season-long total. So for an example, if Nico did the qualifier and finished 20th, he would compete as a challenger. If he won that, he would get a certain number of points. I think it's 250. If Victor Hoffer finishes 30th, last amongst all the pros, he would get 270. So he would still get more points than Nico. But if Nico then does the next qualifier and makes it into the pro field and finishes 10th and earns, 500 points, then he takes his 250 plus that 500. And if those 750 are good enough, I think he would go to the final amongst the top 30, maybe. I mean, something like this.
I'm not a fan of Yeah.
So I think it needs to be explained a little bit more clearly.
They should make an infographic, like more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
that will be coming. They've been starting to put some stuff out like that. I'm sure there's a lot on their plate, and they're going to be rolling out that information. So I think the questions are fair, but I do think that there are athletes who will come through the challenger or the challenger qualifiers and make an impact on the pro season and ultimately earn the pro card next year.
Yeah.
I'm still sourcing Hoffer. I mean, we obviously know what weightlifting 101 is. I just don't know if he's kind of taken over, full programming for Hoffer.
No, he's not. He's doing barbell specific stuff.
Well, no, I mean, he's what I found is that he's done some conditioning pieces for him as well. So,
well, he in collaboration with a specialist in that form, probably. Swimming specialist.
So maybe there's some collaboration between him.
Yeah.
Because I know he does a lot with weightlifting 101 because, but yeah, there probably is maybe someone that's doing, kind of like what Adler's done or some of the other where they brought in Henshaw or something like that. So maybe there's some collaboration effort. But in terms of him being with the camp, no, as of 8 weeks ago was the last post that he did anything with HWPO. So yeah.
That was over 2 hours. I think it was a great show. A lot of you guys were with us throughout it, which we appreciate. And those who came and went, always great happy to have you guys.
Great engagement.
Yeah, really the questions helped drive the show. The comments from yesterday's post. Nico, awesome, man. Clearly people loved having you here. Great insight, good balance to the conversation, good perspective, and questionable wardrobe choice.
Oh, Nico.
We're gonna run it back. We're gonna run it back next year.
There we go.
With or next week, excuse me.
Is that Cooper DeSheen?
It is.
Wow.
I'm sending it in to get graded.
The first white cornerback in almost 20 years.
No, so there's a couple
to be drafted in the first round.
Yeah, we're gonna run it back next week with the women. It'll be a similar flow. We'll get the article and the Instagram post out on Tuesday, I think. Try to do the show on Wednesday again. Nico, will you come back? The question is if we'll invite him back.
I'll come back. I think I'm better on the men's field than on the women's field. Just
we have said and I knew that, but you do know about the women, but you definitely have an intimate and deep knowledge of the men's field at the top of this sport, whatever the sport is called. So maybe we'll have Nico next week, but definitely we'll have at least one guest on, maybe two, and we'll break down the women's field. It's I think it's just as compelling and interesting in the men's, maybe for some different reasons, but it's also consists of most of the best women in the world. And I mean, it's going to be a very competitive year with the absence of Tia and Gabby, obviously for different reasons. There's a lot of opportunity for a lot of the women. And so I think that kind of group we talked about 2 through 10 on the men's side, you're going to see something similar on the women with plenty of different athletes who feel like they have a potential to do something special in the WFP this year. So thank you guys for being with us. Nico, man, you're the man, brother. Thanks for doing this. Patrick, as always. And I'll close it out today. Everybody out there, be friendly, our friends.
Bye, guys.